My name's Amy Sayward, and I have to admit that my research tends to go wherever my intellectual curiosity goes. I got my PhD at Ohio State University in U.S. diplomatic history, and my first book and my dissertation were about folks I call international civil servants. And you're probably wondering who those are. I look specifically at the World Bank, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Health Organization. And these were all new agencies created by the United Nations after World War II. And basically what I ended up arguing was they invented the idea of economic development in the Third World. That's why I called the book The Birth of Development. Now, since writing that book, I followed up with some other shorter pieces about the United Nations, about economic development, the typical types of things you'd expect to follow that project. But then, I ended up doing something entirely different for my second book. Even though I really enjoyed looking at agriculture, health, some other things I hadn't done before, I ended up shifting and writing my second book on the death penalty abolition movement in the state of Tennessee. You might wonder what that has to do with anything related to the first area of research, and the answer is really nothing. But I became really fascinated by the question of why was it that Tennessee hadn't executed anyone between 1960 and the year 2000? Especially because if you look at what people were writing about the death penalty, which since 1976, more than 80% of all executions have happened in the South. So commentators say, well, that's obviously due to the history of slavery and racism in the South, or it's due to the culture of honor and violence that exists in the South, or it has to do with the fundamental Christian religion in the South. Okay, well, if that's the case, Tennessee has fundamental Christians. It had a history of slavery. It has this culture of honor and violence that's part of Southern culture. But it wasn't executing anyone. So that's really the question that led me to write this book. And what are the answers, you're probably wondering? The answers are that, yes, Tennesseans, good religious Christians. And some of those good religious Christians think that the death penalty is morally reprehensible. And they worked and created a grassroots abolition movement trying to abolish the death penalty that's lasted for more than 35 years now. And yes, Tennessee has this other history, but Tennessee's political leaders have tried to portray Tennessee as being on the cutting edge of the New South. We're the Athens of the South in Nashville. You know, we're the folks that Nissan wants to come and invest in. And so that's how I explain that question. And that book, called Tennessee's New Abolitionists, The Fight Against the Death Penalty in the Volunteer States, due out this month. So, what's my next research project? I don't know yet. But that's the problem. When you follow your intellectual curiosity, it can take you almost anywhere. You can even end up as a diplomatic historian from New York State who writes a history of the death penalty abolition movement in Tennessee.